Good evening, everyone. My name is Joy Chen. I'm with the Eaton Fire Survivors Network. Welcome to our very special webinar on PUSD. We are honored to be joined today by PUSD Board President Jennifer Hall-Lee, Superintendent Dr. Elizabeth Blanco, and also Facilities Director Michael Dunning. Before we get started, I have a few announcements for the Eaton Fire Survivors Network. Number one, we have some urgent and exciting actions that you can take this week. Number one, you can sign up to share your insurance stories. You may know that 70% of insured Eaton and Palisades fire survivors are having delays and denials that are impeding our entire recovery. Lawmakers are asking, like, what is really going on? Is there a problem with insurance? So if you'd like to share your insurance story, it's really, really important for all of us that we show the world what's really happening. I will be filming our insurance stories all evening, this Friday evening, at our EFSN community dinner. So please come to the dinner, hang out with the best group of survivors in the world, and spend 2 or 3 minutes being interviewed on camera with me. I'm going to drop that link in the chat where you can sign up for an interview slot and also to RSVP for the dinner. Secondly, you may know that Edison has come out last week with a draft wildfire compensation proposal for how they will compensate all of us. Survivors have put together a draft list of demands, and we'd really love your input. So we have had hundreds of survivors already provide input. Please click on this link and you will have an opportunity to provide your input as well. We want to make sure that our draft demands are inclusive of everybody, including you. And with that, this is how tonight's evening is going to work. Jennifer and Elizabeth and Mike maybe have put together a small presentation for us, and we're grateful for that. They will share a few slides to us to sort of give us an overview of the kinds of questions that they've been hearing from parents in the last few months and answers to those. That will go until about 7:15. And then I'm going to introduce our two awesome parent moderators for tonight. Okay, I'm going to leave you hanging as to who those are. So first, let's start with Jennifer and Elizabeth.
Thank you, Joy. I'm Jennifer Hall-Lee, Board President for PUSD.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Blanco, Superintendent for PUSD.
And so I was going to start off the slideshow. If we want to share the screen, we have Fatima here in our office who's going to be advancing the slides. But I wanted to thank everyone for being here and how important it is for us that you're here to listen to us, because we know it's been such a terrible time for everyone and also for our students. And you know, we really appreciate the time taken. And we also wanted to just let you know that this year after the fire, our student think tank, and many of those kids lost their homes, they organized their own conference in downtown LA at a big hotel. And I went to that, and it was so exciting because they had a breakout session on the fire, and they talked all about their experiences. They talked about their experiences in PUSD, and it just really warmed my heart because I knew that they were suffering so much. But that just really shows you the resilience and the joy in our students. So here's the presentation we're going to give to you before we take questions. And I just wanted to go over our academic celebrations. We can go to the next slide, Fatima. And we've received some significant state and national recognitions last school year. Rose City Continuation High School, it was awarded again for a model continuation school. And we've got California Distinguished Schools Awards. Altadena Arts Magnet and Field Elementary are newly given this, this award, with Sierra Madre Elementary having it for the second time. And the Sierra Madre Middle School is actually finishing up its cycle for this award. And then we also got our Magnet Awards for Magnet Demonstration Schools, Altadena Arts Magnet, and Octavia E. Butler, Magnet Schools of Distinction. This award, there's only 4 in the state, and 2 of them are right here in PUSD. So we can go to the next slide. for our significant sports achievements. Two of our schools, Marshall, girls tennis, and PHS football, reached the Southern Section Divisional Championships. And we're really excited about that because all of our high schools are participating in high-level sports. And we can go to the next slide, please, Fatima. Arts and
Oh,
enrichment.
I'm sorry, Jennifer, let me just stop for a second. And I forgot to invite everybody to put questions and comments into the chats. You can put them in chats, or it might be even easier for you to just pull down to hosts and panelists. Either way, you can put it in chats or to hosts and panelists. If you have a comment, you don't have to disguise it as a question. We're interested in a discussion with everyone. So, so as they're speaking, feel free to put those in, and then Micah and Anna, our two moderators, can work them into our discussion. Sorry about that. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay, that's all right. So arts and enrichment in the district, we're so lucky to have Ms. Karen Anderson, who has outlined 3 different levels of how our students interact with the arts, and just a couple of high points here. Last year, 6,500 students engaged in a program. We have My Masterpieces in TK through 6. And that means that she exposed more children to the arts than some districts have students in schools. We also have the All-Star Musical with our professional partner, Pasadena Playhouse. And in January 2027, January 1, the All-Star Band, the PUSD All-Star Band, has been invited to be in the parade. They actually applied for it and got it. So in addition to GATE and our International Baccalaureate, which we keep increasing our diplomas for IB, our arts and enrichments accomplishments are always worth taking note about. Next slide. Our early childhood accomplishments, we are increasing enrollment here, and we have TK in every single school. And we have grown from 365 kids to 446. We've grown by 81 students. And we have a partnership with Pacific Oaks here. We have many partnerships.
We're up to 550 now.
Oh, we're up to 550 now. That was incoming. So, so next slide, please. Our English learner growth. We have double-digit academic growth as well as graduation rate, which has improved by 13%. Chronic absenteeism has declined, and our reclassification rate has increased also. So next, I'm just going through these quickly. You'll have time to access this later. Our literacy growth, we have a 17% growth of students into early on level or above with literacy. And then the next slide. For math, it's a 23% growth. And that wraps up these achievements. But what I also wanted to say is that the Western Justice Center, our partner, bestowed 2 awards on our middle schools, Eliot and McKinley. It was the Peacemaker Award. And also the California Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports Coalition bestowed 6 awards for excellence in learning environments for PUSD. So that just gives you a lay of the land of what's been happening this year. And, you know, so many, 10,000 of our kids were in the evacuation zone. And I'm going to wrap that up now and kind of slide this over, literally, to the superintendent to talk about the financial part of this presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, and we thought it was important to just, recap some of the achievements and resilience of our students, because we've all been through a lot as adults, and, seeing how our students came through it on top and, are still being leaders in our school district is something that all of you should be really proud of as parents of the children that, we get to serve every day. We do believe in, try to train our teachers to say 5 positives to every 1 negative. That's a research-based strategy that helps, people overcome trauma in bad times. And so that's the reason we started out with the presentation. We know that wasn't all of, the questions that you had, but it's important to remember that even through all of the tragedy and trauma of the fire, our children are still, doing well and having great accomplishments. And a lot of these kids have been through so much with COVID and then this fire. And we do have a lot of support for anyone who is not doing well or struggling at the schools, please do not hesitate, like, to reach out if your family needs help or if your children need help. So I'm going to switch over to the budget and the fiscal outlook. And I will say that, last year there was an expectation for us to cut $27 million as part of our fiscal stabilization plan. And we just really were not able to meet that mark due to the fire, right? We cut about $12 million. It was very painful for all of us. And when you don't cut the budget when you need to, it does compound. And for us, we're required to plan the budget 3 years out, and we have to have a 3% reserve left. And so we have been deficit spending for a while. What that means is that we're budgeting more money than we're actually getting from the state and federal government. And when you're deficit spending, you'll eventually spend your savings account. So during COVID, we were given an additional $62 million. And that was really inflating our bottom line, looking like we had a lot of money, but our budgeting practice was still spending more money than we were actually taking in, right? So we all know if we do that with our home budgets or on our credit cards, we will eventually run out of that money that we're using and spending more than our actual income. So that's what's causing our fiscal situation. And why we have that fiscal situation is because we have declining enrollment. In the whole San Gabriel Valley, all school districts are facing declining enrollment prior to COVID because of the lower birth rates and the high cost of housing in the San Gabriel Valley. So many young families move out to San Bernardino and Riverside, and those school districts are experiencing growth. But that has not been the case for Pasadena Unified and several other districts for several years. So our unduplicated count that generates our extra money for low socioeconomic, foster youth, English learners also dropped to be 4% lower in last year. And when that happens, they take the money away during the same year. So you get to rebench every 3 years and get the information from parents again. You can do it every year if you want, but you're required to do it every 3 years. And so when we did it prior to the fire and we're collecting the data, we saw a dip in the number of children with higher needs, which means we lost an additional $1 million last year. And then there are the rising cost of unfunded mandates when we're serving our students with disabilities who deserve and need the services we give them. Their money, their main core money, is generated on general education ADA. So the number of general ed kids that come to a school district. So when you have a decline in the population of general education students, you get less money to serve students that have high needs. That is a formula that I'm trying to work with, the legislators, the governor's office, to say this doesn't make sense for declining enrollment districts, right? Because then what happens is we have to take a higher amount of money from the general fund to make up for money that we're not receiving. So these factors, when you're spending more money than you actually bring in, you have to create a fiscal stabilization plan, and we are monitored by the Los Angeles County Office of Education. And they, make sure that we correct the problem, or they will come in and help us. There's more serious sanctions if we don't listen to them and get our finances in order. You could go to the next slide. So there are some key points for the multi-year projection. The average daily attendance is not sufficient to offset the negative impact of having a lower unduplicated count in our LCFF revenue. And then the reductions approved by the board last year made a significant impact, but as it stands, we still have a lot of cuts to make, as I mentioned, $30 million. And then there's always inflation and things that have to be factored in as well as that target amount. You can go to the next slide. So this was a slide from our second interim report in the end of last year, where we were explaining to the public what contributes to this problem. So we have had rising benefits, and we had been a lower paying district for many years, so we did not increase the cost of benefits for our employees because that was one of the attractions or benefits we could say that we had, even though we didn't have high salaries. We've been trying to work to correct that, to come up to the median, as same as other teachers are paid. But insurance keeps going up. If you own a business or work in a business, I'm sure you see how the cost of insurance is rising, right? And that's something that many other districts also are struggling with. And then the TK program is wonderful. We're glad to have new children into our school district and their parents to build our enrollment, but the ratio is 10-1 this year. So we have to hire additional staff. So it's a little bit of an unfunded mandate, but it's going to be a good unfunded mandate because children are going to get an early education and it will help enrollment. And then insurance revenues. Also, besides health insurance, like our fire insurance, luckily we had really good fire insurance, but all insurance costs are going up faster than we're getting in what's called the COLA, the cost of living increases. So these are costs that have contributed to the overspending, restricted maintenance, before we received the bond and the second bond, there were a lot of projects that we had going on and just taking care of the lawns and all of those things. All of the price of that has gone up. So lower COLAs and 2 years out has decreased our total LCFF base amount. That's the local control funding formula. And we really have had, the combination of things happening. But in addition, this was going on prior to the fire. And as I mentioned in the beginning, there was an expectation that we cut $27 million and last year, and we just felt it was too harsh and too much for our community to deal with the fire at the same time. Next slide. So factors that aren't in, there's always unexpected things when you're doing these multi-year projections. So you might feel like, oh yeah, we got it under control, but then there are other things that come up, which future changes in compensation. Of course, we want to stay aligned with other districts and pay our employees, a living wage with compensation that's the same as surrounding districts. And then unknown liabilities, where people may get injured or, there's a lot of lawsuits behind the scenes in any business, but particularly in schools. So we have to predict out what, those lawsuits sometimes could be very costly. We are still, I'll give you one example, in a litigation for closing Roosevelt and Franklin, and think about how long ago we closed those schools. So we're still having to pay, with attorneys to fight that situation because there was a belief that we harmed children of certain ethnicities, which is really not true because 60% of our district is Hispanic. So any school that we consolidated would have an impact on Hispanic children. So potential reductions in state and federal. You're seeing the news. We received a letter from our magnet grant today telling us that we have to show them certain assurances about the way we educate children. So our magnet money could be in jeopardy. We don't know yet. We'll try to give them the information that they need, but those kinds of things just pop up, right? That you're not expecting. And then a lot of expenses that are not covered by the fire. We really felt it was important that our community had psychological safety. So when they started us, doing assessments of people's homes of the soil, and people were finding heavy toxins, and they said, your schools are right down the street. We made the decision to really test every school and not have any parents feel like, why didn't you test my school? It was close to the fire, but you picked that one. So that was all, a cost that's not covered by any insurance or any grants. And we also have to do all of the remediation for the toxins that we did find in different places, some caused by the fire and some not caused by the fire. So those are some things that are just examples of what happens to change the budget outlook unexpectedly. Next slide. So we are taking some proactive steps. Tomorrow evening will be the second meeting of our superintendent's budget advisory committee. We did have the committee last year and they looked at all of the central offices and we looked at packages. We're following a book by a former superintendent called Postins, and it's budgeting.
Dr. Blanco, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we wrap this up? And we have
Sure.
so many questions that we're ready to go. So,
Okay.
yeah, as
And
you're getting close to the end, perhaps we could quickly wrap this up and then we can have
okay.
an active discussion.
Okay, and so this is just a list of the areas that we're going to continue to look at with the SBAC. You can go to the next slide. And this is the timeline that we have for fiscal stabilization. So the board will be making their final decisions in November. We'll have a study session and also a voting session on what the reductions will be. Next slide. And these are the work streams, and you can stay tuned on our website and learn more about it. And this is just about how the board will engage in the process. And soil testing, do we have a few minutes for Mr. Dunning to talk about that, or you just want us to answer questions about it?
Maybe Mr. Dunning, if you could just speak for 1 minute on this, and I'm sure there'll be many more questions. I think the soil is a major topic of concern for many of the parents.
It does look like it's consuming the chat too, so
okay,
I'll
great.
keep it high level for now. We did test all of our district sites to make sure that we were checking all surfaces and exterior soil testing for 34 school sites. We had multiple impacted areas. We were able to clear a good portion of those, with the remaining left with DTSC for final reporting and for us to receive. We're basically waiting for the final report to come back from DTSC before we can move forward with the zones that are still covered with orange fencing, which are the remaining impacted areas. And that gets covered on the next slide. Yeah. So wherever you see on our current campuses, wherever the orange construction fencing is, those are the zones that are still impacted. And we're still waiting for further guidance on our next moves.
All right. Thank you so much to Jennifer, Elizabeth, and Mike. At this point, yeah, stop sharing. Thank you. And I would like to welcome on stage Micah May, who is a Discord moderator in our PUSD channel. Thank you, Micah, for your awesome leadership there. And another major leader in our community, Anna Yeager, who is president of the PTA at Altadena Arts Magnet. You might have also other honorifics that you would like to share for yourself, but in any case, I will turn it over to Micah and Anna. Thank you for leading our discussion.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, everybody. My name is Micah. Like Joy said, just been helping out with the Discord channel that's named PUSD Safety. As a group within the Eaton Fire Survivors Network, the title came from trying to find a quick way to show up for all these topics of health and safety at our campuses. It's more or less a news feed where we're trying to keep up with facts for everyone. I know that parents are stratified in attention these days. So I'm really thankful for all the PUSD leadership here who are joining us tonight.
I'm Anna. I'm again president of PTA at Altadena Arts Magnet. I'm an Altadena resident. I'm excited to be here tonight to answer everyone's questions, facilitate those questions. I do want to start with the Dodgers are up 5-0 right now, so I think that's important for everyone to know. So first question, we've gotten a lot in the chat, but also some in advance. The big question we've received across the board is why PUSD is not committed to interior testing of our schools post-fire. There's new guidance from Purdue University advising that testing for only ash, soot, and char has no health-based exposure standards. And what is your response to parents who say this guidance from Purdue supports their concern that the interior of PUSD schools have never been properly confirmed to be safe for our students and teachers to inhabit?
Well, I think we have been working with the experts through our insurance, which include an environmental hygienist, an environmental lawyer, DTSC, EPA, the governor's office, the Pasadena Public Health Department, and the LA County Department of Public Health. So those are the people that we have to take our guidance from. And you could bring me lots of like different studies about different topics, right? And it's not that I would say that I don't necessarily believe them, but we have certain groups that have oversight for the school district and what our policies and procedures are. I have voiced several concerns about post-fire guidance to everyone that I speak to. I was in San Diego earlier today, speaking to a county group of superintendents. And, I said, there's lots of stuff on what you do to prepare for a fire, what you do during a fire, but I have not been feeling that it's been sufficient about post-fire, right? And I think that's what a lot of our families are feeling. And I do think we need to move legislators that way, because this is not going to be the last fire. This happened when it wasn't even in fire season. But that is who we are regulated by. We do have a meeting tomorrow with some of our parents in DTSC. We'll see if they change anything, but that is what they told us at this time, that, we have gone above and beyond what is required to inhabit the building. So that's who we have to listen to and take our advice from right now.
I have a question, Dr. Blanco, from the chat. This comes from Muna. If you have really good fire insurance, and sounds like PUSD tried to have a very bolstered scaffolding for whatever comes our way, why is it not paying for indoor testing and for soils in the burn zone?
So we did soil testing because it's not something that was required, right? So we don't, like I'm mentioning, don't have a lot of post-fire guidance that says this is something that's mandatory. And all of you working with insurance companies, I mean, I know you're going through a lot, right? So we have like meetings with 20 people. We have their forensic accountant, our forensic accountant, their attorneys, our attorneys, and we come to agreement on many things. And they have sent us to specialists that have told us that the cleaning procedures that we have engaged in are sufficient. I know that as new information comes up about houses, it is very concerning, for the people who live around schools. Schools have had some different standards for quite a while, like lead-based paint has not been allowed in schools for many years, right? And that might not be the same with some of your homes. So the toxins may be different. I'm not going to tell you as a parent not to be concerned about your child. I told many of you I have 6 kids, 14 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren. I care deeply about all of them, and I understand, but we do have to follow the guidance and the science of the experts that are assigned to us.
Yeah. I know we have so many questions. I saw the list that Micah and Anna had prepared before this, and we are having a pile of questions in the chat. So may I just suggest that we try to answer each one very quickly so we can get to as many as possible.
Sure.
Thank you, Joy. Another question we received a lot about is with our teacher reassignments, our reassigned faculty. That has been another big question on behalf of all of our parents. At the last special board meeting, a resolution was introduced to protect schools highly impacted by the fire from mid-year teacher transfers, class consolidations, and program cuts for the next 3 years. It was not placed on the agenda for the September general board meeting. Are you able to commit to placing it on the agenda for the next general board meeting on October 23rd?
Not at this time. That resolution is really against what we have in our labor contracts and what's negotiated. So I am waiting for a legal answer back to see if it's considered negotiating away from the table. So I'm not going to say that I won't put it on. I'm still waiting for legal advice on that. It could be put on and I could say that it's negotiating away from the table, but I would like to get some more information because I don't think that would be a satisfying answer. I can say with confidence that the county would strongly suggest that our board not engage in any resolutions that tie their hands fiscally. I think it's very important that everyone on this call understands that if we did not have our fire money in our bottom line, our board would already be taken over. So we're, as much as I would like not to have to transfer teachers, that is a standard business practice. I was at a meeting with superintendents this week, and I asked them, how many of you, this is throughout the whole San Gabriel Valley, transfer teachers on the 10th day of school? They all raised their hands. So we did not get any special allowance, in the legislation that was written in some ways to help Pasadena and the Palisades about teacher transfers. So it would cost us additional money if I left teachers in one place and then had to hire more teachers to cover the schools that needed teachers, right? Because the kids don't come in a neat package. I can say that all of our teachers are wonderful and love your children. And I know that this is difficult, right? When your teacher has to move, but it is something that is a very common business practice, especially in schools with declining enrollment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Blanco. As a follow-up question to that, there was an inquiry about sharing some transparency as to how money is spent with reassigning teachers because their salaries are relatively small. How does that make a significant enough difference to our multi-million-dollar deficit?
So if we would not have done the transfers that we did, we would have been adding 1.2 million to the budget deficit. So, average teacher salary with benefits is probably between $150,000 to $175,000. And I think we moved 7 or 8 teachers during this time.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Because I appreciate we've been going through a digest of things and there's a lot of meatier questions for all this. I would like to dig more back into the hypotheticals of where money can shift in the budget. So questions that have been brought up generally, knowing there's this 3-year, $30 million deficit for the district, is campus closure a possibility? Is that something that people explore? What would an impact of that sort of thing be? Would it help the district or?
So I've been here for 3 of the school consolidations, just timing that I've been employed by Pasadena Unified. And so we've closed 11 campuses and we're only making money from one campus, the Burbank Stratford Private School. And so prior to the fire, we had started a investigation, deep dive into the current assets that we have to generate revenue from the schools that we've already consolidated. And as I mentioned, there is a lawsuit still pending on the last consolidation over equity. So the law requires us to do an equity study now. So 2 things. We haven't been successful in making or generating revenue from the schools that we've closed so far. They've either, several of them became charter schools. Some of them we used to re-inhabit ourselves for different offices, so we still have to pay for the maintenance. Generally, when you close a school, you save money in the principal and the secretary. The custodians, because the children have to move, the teachers have to move because the children are still there. So unless you have a through line to say, this school is going to become this, a week after we close it or a month after we close it, and have a solid plan, it's not something that is going to help the budget. So what we were trying to do is really generate revenue from the assets that we already have before we talked about consolidating additional schools. I'm not going to say that isn't going to be a conversation in the future, but it isn't going to be something that's going to help us for this current budget situation. And the equity study alone would probably take a year in itself. San Francisco Unified just went through a study with Stanford. And in the equity study, you know, you're focusing on not marginalizing certain populations or harming children. And so when they got their results, they didn't really like the schools that came out that should be closed. So I think that's something that, you know, we really have to consider when we move forward, is that we, you know, want to continue to look at how to generate revenue with the buildings that we currently have. And the fire also put a hold on our asset management, but we have got permission from the board to explore what developers might be interested in the Linda Vista property, and we will work with the community to see what they want as well in their community. And then we're moving forward with Roosevelt staff housing that can generate between 1.5 and 2 million a year, but it's not built yet. So there is potential with the assets, but we're just not there yet.
Dr. Blanco and President Hawley, going back to reassign faculty, you know, you'd mentioned during your slides psychological safety of our students, our student community. I think that also ties to our parent community. With the teacher reassignments, it's obviously impacted all of our schools and families. What is the long-term plan for our schools impacted by the fire? As we know, the recovery to the area will be a long road, and enrollment will undoubtedly be inconsistent for the next years. How do you plan to support these schools, teachers, and their students?
Well, I think, you know, as I mentioned, we have social emotional supports, and we have SEL curriculum in our classrooms. But when you do have the declining enrollment situation, you will have less staff. It is a seniority model. It is a model that protects, you know, unions protect the employees. It's unfortunate for newer employees that they, you know, have to wait till they become senior employees to have those same protections. But I don't want to make promises that I can't keep, right? We have to follow our contract, and we want our teachers to feel that we value them, and every employee. You know, there's been a lot of conversation about cutting the central office, and we are looking at the central office, but the majority of cuts that we've done over the last 2 years have been in the central office. We only have 16 certificated people left in the central office that are paid out of general fund. And so a little more classified, but we have tried to keep cuts away from our schools.
Oops.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
Bad timing.
Live webinar, everybody.
While we wait for them, Mr. Dunning, could we ask a quick question? There was a lot about soil, the campus soil, following those soil testing results. Any further remediation, or it sounds like you're still waiting? Is that correct? And then the other question that came up was, is PUSD open to bioremediation?
Bioremediation, we'd have to get into a little bit of the details on that, but I think right now the current line is that we've submitted all of our information over to DTSC, and we're working through each site. Remember, we came back and we tested 34 sites and sent them the results. So some of that tomorrow, I think, is we have a meeting with them. They're going to try to clarify a little bit and listen to the complaints from a few of the specific sites. I know it's Pasadena Arts Magnet and Jackson Elementary. So we're interested to see what they have to say. We've had discussions with them, but it would be, we're really just waiting for guidance on the next steps. There's only so much we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And all the information that that we've gained since we started this testing has been, we need to come out with a plan first, and then we can let everyone know what that is.
You know, since that testing first came out in late spring, you know, that now there's been announcements of beryllium and hexavalent chromium. Can there be addendums to the testing, at least for these, like, especially for elementary school campuses?
Ultimately, we know what the step out testing has turned into. We've seen, what that is, and it hasn't changed as all of our results is they may have gotten to larger areas, and that's what you'll see reflected in the orange fence and where it's moved to. But other than that, we haven't found new materials, which is great news, right? We just waiting for answers on what we do with what we did find. And that's ultimately our answer until we get final guidance. Welcome back.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So, yeah, just finishing up the thought that we do have some serious budget reductions to make. And I spoke with the county superintendent today and asked if there are, supports they can help us with for any employees that are displaced from our district, that, we want to make them know that they're valued, and if we can help them get other jobs outside of PUSD if there is situations where we can't place them.
And on teacher transfers, and moratorium, the resolution, we do need to get legal advice on that. Because we can't negotiate away from the table with our union.
Thank you. I have one quick follow-up on the reassigned faculty and declining enrollment and all of that. There are a lot of concerns about our magnet programs and the DLIP programs, because as enrollment's declining, those may also be impacted. How do we sustain those moving forward?
Yeah, our goal has been, not to cut any programs. That's, like I mentioned, we tried to really preserve what's at schools, but I think also we have to be open to, possibilities. There's things that we have held as strong values, right? Combo classes, we've tried to protect our DLIP, we've tried to protect early grades when we could afford to do so. But, Glendale Unified is a perfect example. They have combos in all their DLIP programs. They've invited us to come and visit. They said, bring your parents, because I talked to other superintendents and board members in our 5-star coalition and said, our parents are really concerned about this, but I know you do this. And they have assured me, the students are still learning and making great progress. So I know it's hard to reimagine the things that we're used to. And we just have to believe that we can still have a high quality education system with what we have. What really matters is, the teachers in the classroom and the support and training we give them. And that's what you're asking about and you're concerned about. And I really do appreciate that, because they are the ones that make the difference. All of us at the central office have been teachers in our careers. I always tell our union, we didn't hatch out of eggs. We know what you're going through. We've been there. And we do care about them, but we're going to have to do things in ways that we haven't done them before. But I can assure you that other public education systems close by us are already engaging in these practices, and that's why they're not in the situation we're in right now, budget-wise. So we just have to live within our means, and we can still have a quality education system.
Thank you, Dr. Blanco. I have kind of a bigger picture question I think a lot of our chat has a strong presence from specific schools, and I don't want to forget the charter schools in this wider Pasadena set of campuses. So from Sarah, who asked earlier, can you please speak to PUSD intentions and plans with regard to the charter schools that were displaced from leased PUSD campuses? Will charter schools be offered the opportunity to return to their former campuses?
I think it's too soon for us to make a commitment about that. We're still in negotiations with our insurance. I can assure, our charter schools that we haven't asked them to do anything that we haven't asked our own, teachers and students to do. It's not ideal sharing, there's a storming and norming that goes on if you ever have to share anything with people like space, that's always a challenge. And we made sure that we had a space for every student at the same time. When we ordered furniture for our kids, we ordered furniture for them. We set up space for them, you know, the same way we did for our children. It wasn't ideal, but everybody had a space. And I can't really say now what's happening with the properties that have been burned down because we're still talking with our insurance companies and we haven't come to any final decisions on that. But they definitely will have a space and be treated. You know, we made sure that when we didn't have lunch, right, and our schools were burned down, and we invited them to come to our lunch lines and said, you know, we'll worry later about what the rules are because we wanted all kids to eat. And we just had an event with Disney at Don Benito, and we invited the charter school and private schools because these are all the children from our community. So there is not a, you know, there's different rules and regulations for them, but there's nobody here that feels like all kids aren't important.
Thank you, Dr. Blanco. Another question we had, and perhaps it's an opportunity to better educate us on the subject, is the reserve fund that we hear a lot about this reserve fund. Why does the district continue to grow its reserve fund while cutting over 100 jobs? These decisions appear out of step with our priorities as a district. And could the board commit to restricting any future cuts to administrative positions only, and instead prioritize investments directly in the classroom where research consistently shows the greatest impact on student outcomes?
Yeah, the reserves, I mean, I think when you saw this up and down was the COVID money, the $62 million that I spoke about. And it was hard for even our board to understand, like, what do you mean we're deficit spending and we're deficit budgeting, right? That's what we were doing. And we weren't necessarily spending all of the money because we had a lot of COVID money. So we might have said we were going to do certain things or hire people, but it didn't happen. So the money was left there looking like we were growing the reserve. The real reserve of the money that was not COVID was not growing, right? We're actually budgeting and spending more than we're getting. And that was very confusing to everyone, but we couldn't come to the public and say, we're going to start budget cutting and doing the things we're doing now. And then you looked at the budget and saw like $62 million, or, you know, at one point we had to think about 85. That wouldn't have made sense. But that was all like one-time money, right? And so if you do things that are ongoing out of one-time money, then you will eventually have to stop doing those things, or you'll run out of money, which is the current situation that we're in. The classroom formula is very hard to understand. It's a formula based on how many people are actually teaching in a classroom. It's not that we're not buying books for our students or giving our teachers materials to teach with. And so when you have an influx of money in the general funds, like the COVID money, you're going to get that phenomena of not spending enough money in the classroom. If you went through the whole San Gabriel Valley or LA County and you said, how many people asked for waivers to that formula because they couldn't meet it, the majority of the county did. So it is something that is said often, but it's not all that it seems. It's about adults teaching in the classroom. So we are following our contractual ratios and our ratios in the LCAP. And that's why the county and the state grant the waivers, because they know it's impossible to meet the formula the way it's designed.
Thank you for that. Now, as a time check, I just want to note to everybody, we're closing in on our last few questions. Anna and I have seen a lot of chatter. We're going to try to fit more in. And if folks are willing to stay, we will fill in as much as we can. Toward that, we love talking about budget. I have another question about this budget. I know last week there was an SBAC committee meeting looking at what the next few months are going to be. And December marks the implementation phase of the forthcoming budget cuts. How will our schools and their families be affected by these budget cuts? And what do you anticipate taking place?
So the implementation is talking about that we have to start noticing people and for the next year. So you will see, it's not in, it's a good question that you have, because some employees ask me too, does that mean I'm not gonna have a job in January? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that, you know, there's seniority and moving people around and giving them choices of what jobs they want. All that's a very lengthy process. So implementation means we start the processes of notifying people and telling them what
We
options are.
have to notice them.
Yeah.
We are required to notice them.
But they still will be employed until the end of the year. If they're gonna go to a different school, they're still gonna be at their same school until the end of the year. The only time that you're moving teachers around, like what people are very concerned about right now, is on the 10th day of school. That's, like I said, a standard business practice in all labor contracts. That you look at, you know, where children have come and where you need teachers, who has what credential, and you would move people around before you would hire new teachers.
I think they want to talk about the SBAC process and the process we're in and how it's going to affect the schools. So the SBAC is composed of community members, same community members from last year, plus some students this year. And they're going to be meeting next week.
Yeah, they're meeting every week until we get to November 13th, when we have a study session for the board, and then November 20th, the board will be voting on the final decisions. So tomorrow they'll start showing the packages of reductions, and it will, managers will present what their department would look like if they had a 25% reduction,
Or 50%.
50, 75, or if the department was completely gone.
And the board will make the final decision on that.
And then the committee will prioritize and rank the packages after they hear all of the presentations. So right now there's going to be, you know, two weeks where the presentations will happen. And then the next meeting after that will be the ranking process. And then we'll share all that information with the board, and they'll make the final decisions.
This wasn't a scripted question, or I haven't seen it specifically asked in the chat either. But Pasadena Unified Schools have so many sort of specialized campuses, multiple DLIP programs, magnet programs that are atypical from what people outside of PUSD define as a magnet school. So in this time of possibly noticing multiple faculty in these specialized, individualized schools, what can be done to not water down those individual special characteristics of what formed and designed those programs?
Yeah, I think when you look at magnet, it's kind of like startup money. If you look at John Muir High School as an example, the college magnet program, we have the partnership with PCC. And even though the magnet money isn't there, we still have our partnership. And we've had students graduate with their AAs last year. We had one student graduated with 4 AAs that was a fire victim. And so that partnership and what we built with magnet, the training of the teachers, the concepts, they live on even when the magnet money is gone. And I think that, you know, we were able to build some unique programs in DLIP that were higher quality, and we had a lot of support people outside of the classroom that could help our teachers implement magnet. But the core of the what we sometimes refer to as signature programs lives on long after the startup money, right? So we're only looking at things that like are above and beyond. And when people ask us to look at the programs and why we want to keep them, the students still need a teacher. So whether or not they have a DLIP teacher teaching them 2 languages or a STEAM teacher teaching them art and science, they're still going to need a teacher, even if they don't have those specialty talents and training. So we're only looking at things right now that are above and beyond the base of the programs to have the conversations about. But we have a program efficiency study going on right now too, to see return on investment, but we will not be using that information to make budget cuts this year. We're kind of in program preservation because just like you, we love the things that we've developed for the children and we've invested a lot of time in them. And we think, that they're helping them be competitive with their private school peers. So we want to keep everything that we can. We just know that we have to reimagine the way we're doing some of the things we do.
Okay, thank you. With open enrollments upon us, it's almost time. What do you say to people who are considering coming to PUSD? I mean, there's a lot of parents that the chat is wild and lots of commentary. What do you say to parents who are considering PUSD and aren't feeling, they see parents from PUSD not feeling supported? How do you encourage people to enroll in our schools? I know the budget deficit is discouraging as well. What can we tell parents? What can you tell parents to encourage them to enroll in our district?
Well, and one of the things, let me just interject for a second here. So, it's clear that PUSD is delivering a great education. So OEB is one of the 4 model magnet schools in the state of California. And we've got these distinctions. And we have all these programs and professional partnerships, and John Muir High is growing in enrollment because of what we've placed in these schools. Prior to a lot of these placements and a lot of these fabulous teachers and principals, these schools were not what you're seeing now at all, not by a long shot. So this district has transformed in the last 10 years. Do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think, word of mouth, right? As parents, we listen to each other, and I'm hoping that our TK groups that come really form some strong bonds with parents, and our children we're influenced a lot by them and where they want to stay with friends. And I think you're still going to get a better education here than you're going to get in a lot of public education systems, because we have so many unique things that we can offer children and what we value. And we have so many partnerships, right, that other districts don't have, that experiences in the community, in the 3, unique communities that we work with. And even with Altadena Arts Magnet, when we opened Allendale, people were coming on tours, and that it wasn't completely ready, right? We still do a lot of things to get it ready for you. And they wanted to get in the school because they heard about it. They didn't care that it moved, right? So it's really, you're our best advertisements. And I know right now that everything is not going perfectly, and it is hurtful to lose somebody you care about, right? But with the teacher, remember, the teacher is still part of our school district. She's still part of the PUSD family. Our other teachers care for your kids. We have to do some of these things that are uncomfortable, but your children are still going to get a great education here. And the people that are here care very much. Most of our central office, their children have gone through PUSD schools. They live in other cities. They drive them here to work with us. Dr. Reynoso's kids have been here since kindergarten. They just went off to college. So there has to be good things happening, right? People don't bring their children to work with them in these really long hour taxing jobs if something good isn't happening in the schools.
I absolutely agree with that. I wouldn't be our school PTA president if I didn't love Altadena Arts Magnet. But I think the truth is, for many, with not having things like interior testing, we're worried about our kids getting sick. I think it really boils down to something as simple as that, is staying at PUSD and making sure it's safe. That is, I think, a big question that is coming up with parents enrolling their students right now and thinking about enrollment.
Yeah. Now, and we're going to continue to put pressure on people to get the answers that you're looking for. And, Mr. Dunning is on here every day. We're working at that, it's, as I said, I went in front of all the county superintendents today and I said, look, you got to help me, right? We need post-fire support. We need answers, because we can only go by the experts that are helping us and what they're telling us. Mr. Carmona is his child's in Jackson. He said, do you think I would put my children in a place that's not safe?
Who's
And
Mr. Cremona?
he's the director of Pasadena Public Health. And he said, my children are there. And I said, well, that's not good enough for our parents. They want someone to put these things in writing, right?
Yeah.
But, and Altadena and Jackson are not his jurisdiction. So, but, we're working on that, right? We want to get the same answers that you want. And
Assurances.
yeah, assurances. So what we've been told so far is not to worry. And believe me, when you all leave the room and I say to these people, these are people's children that we're dealing with. You have to tell me the truth. Is everything going to be okay? And they say yes, right? They say it is safe. Because I want your kids to be safe too. And so we will, we'll have another conversation with DTSE tomorrow. We'll see if they come up with anything different. But I do hear what you're saying, and I know your concerns are real.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I know we're at 8 o'clock. We have probably 2 or 3 more hours worth of questions if we were to truly go through the chat. So I want to thank everyone in their grace and what we can fit in tonight. But before we all sign off, I'd like to ask Dr. Blanco and Ms. Hawley, the state has restrictions. Apparently, it seems like we don't get a lot of leeway for being a fire impacted community. And yet there's this possibility of, with this really big budget deficit, that there could be a state takeover. So there's this question from Michael in the chat. What would a takeover from the state look like at a district? And I'm curious what that also, like, if you could both give me an idea of what parents can do beyond that. We want to keep connecting. We would love to have more conversations, but is there something we can do with this, communicating to the state or making something clear at a policy change level that would protect Pasadena in the way that we see fit for our families this year and beyond?
So the first part of the question was, what would a county takeover look like? Was that the first part?
Yeah.
Then there was another part. Okay, so in a county takeover, the board has no power to do anything. They come in and sit at the dais. The superintendent is removed, and you can either get a benevolent superintendent from the county, or you can get someone who doesn't care about anything, and they just start slashing and cutting. They just start cutting. And it's not someone from here necessarily, it could be from anywhere. So from people who have gone through receivership, it's not something you really want to go through. You want to add to that?
Well, I think, first of all, we're going to do everything so that doesn't happen. And, our board made some really tough decisions last year. I didn't put $27 million worth of cuts in front of them, so I can't blame them for not making the cuts, right? We put in front of them what we could, and it was really hard. And I think that they will make the decisions they need to make. So to preserve the fiscal health of Pasadena Unified, no matter how hard it is. I think what we need from you is to have a little faith and work with us, right? In terms, and I know so many of you have, and you replaced so many things for the teachers, and we're so appreciative of that, of things they've lost in the fire. But it's, and and I've told the teachers union too, it's not us against you. Nobody wants to do this. We've got to figure this out together. We've got to learn how to do things together in different ways and support one another. And there's a lot of stories that go on that aren't true. Don't believe them all, right? The contracts has been, there's things that people, I don't want to say, they say things that are untrue purposely. They might look at a bottom line number from an old report and think, you have all this money in contracts. Out of the 74 million in contracts, only 18 million really has any discretionary. And it's really tough things. It's like not to have gaggle. You know how many students' lives we've saved with gaggle on our internet and our devices going to their homes?
Saves them from suicide. So we have gaggle, there's Aries, there's insurance.
There's the patrol. that we heard a school was broken into this weekend, the patrol, right? So yeah, we could not have anyone patrolling the schools, but there's also, you know, some unintended consequences for that. And we will talk about all of these things. You know, and everything we do is important. Every person we employ is valued here. And it's going to be really hard. And I mean, what you could do to help is support your principals, support your teachers. Don't get into such negative discourse about the district, because there's really good things going on, and it doesn't really help anyone. And, you know that everybody that works here wants to do the very best for your children, and we're going to figure all this out, together. We appreciate the money that you've given us through the bond and the parcel tax and, Measure J, all that is helping us. The situation could be worse. And once we
Yes.
get back on our feet, then we'll look at things in a different way. And it's going to take some time, to get this under, control, but I'm confident that the board and the leadership here will be able to do it. And then we're not going to be taken over. And, I want all of you to stay here, and we're going to make sure
Yes.
your schools are safe.
We're going to do the work needed to get through this fiscal stabilization plan.
Thank you. Can I ask one last quick question? You were talking about time, we're looking ahead. There have been several questions about Eliot's rebuild timeline. Is there anything you're able to share with us before we close tonight?
Mike, did you want to share anything about where we are, even with the cleanup of Eliot? And, because I know you're working closely with that.
Sure. Elliot, we just wrapped up the final work that Army Corps of Engineers completed, bringing down the auditorium and the B wing of the A building, right? That's all complete. And the next part is we're going through with insurance on what the rebuild actually looks like, and just the general need of all the additional rules and laws that have come into play since that building has been built originally. As it's such a large impact to the entire campus, right? We have to address those concerns before we can decide on what the actual reimbursement from insurance is. So we're going back and forth on that with insurance. And once we come to a clear decision on both sides, then we'll be able to bring some more information forward to the public.
And I think that is something that's really going to be, a great example of how we can reimagine PUSD together. And the board has already made the commitment to the rebuild, and Mr. Dunning is anxious to get our bonds committee started, and with the community involvement, and start talking about Measure R. And that will be first on the list, because we do believe we need schools in Altadena for our students, and we want to continue our performing arts magnet themes and bring them up into middle and high school. So hopefully very soon, we can all start talking about that together, because I think that will bring hope and happiness to all of us in the community.
There will be a discussion about visioning in the future of our district. And visioning in public schools all over the state is happening, and it will definitely happen here too.
All right. With that, I would like to thank PUSD President Jennifer Hawley, Superintendent Dr. Elizabeth Blanco, and our awesome moderators, Micah May and Anna Yeager. I would say this has been an illuminating discussion on some questions. There are many, many questions that have not been answered. And I hope this will be the first, just the first of many conversations, and that we can work productively to ensure that our kids are safe, they're well educated, and that parents feel the confidence that, that I know that you two are feeling for the future of our school district. Before I close tonight, I would like to just remind everybody of two actions happening this week that are, I think, important for all of us. If you look in the chat, feel free to copy this message out. Number one, with regard to insurance that concerns us all, sign up to share your insurance story at the EFSN community dinner this Friday. I'll be doing interviews of 2 to 3 minutes each. Please sign up to share your insurance story. This is so important because insurance companies are spending millions lobbying the lawmakers and telling them that everything is fine. They're doing a good job of filling our insurance contracts. We know that for 70% of us, that's not happening. Or you can just come for dinner with the best group of survivors in the area. Also, we have come out with draft Edison demands, and we welcome everybody to go through the demands, educate yourself, and also make sure that you are taken care of in these demands. So please go through that tonight if possible, or tomorrow. We would like to have feedback back by the end of the day tomorrow. We would like to submit this document to Edison by Monday or Tuesday of next week. This meeting has been recorded, and you will receive a recording either tomorrow. You'll certainly get it in our Friday community email, which you will receive. And we have your email addresses, so you don't need to send them to us. We will send you the recording by Friday. With that, thank you very much to Elizabeth and Jennifer, and also to Mike and to Micah and Anna, and especially to every one of you who's joined us tonight. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.